They never intended to wake up with thoughts of you filling their mind. That's the first thing you need to understand. Most people struggle to face what they suppress through sheer willpower. Intense emotions often take hold quietly, even when someone tries to remain indifferent. What you experienced wasn't silence. It felt more like an internal conflict they were dealing with privately, something building beneath the surface that they couldn't easily explain. You may have sensed a shift, an invisible tension, something unspoken forming between distance and recognition. The reality is that people rarely accept emotions as they appear. Instead, they question them, resist them, or bury them under logic, pride, and carefully build emotional defenses. When a feeling doesn't align with the identity someone is trying to maintain, it often gets pushed away rather than acknowledged. But suppression doesn't erase emotion. It creates pressure. And over time, that pressure tends to surface in different ways. What is ignored doesn't disappear. It resurfaces in thoughts, reactions, and moments of unexpected reflection. At some point, what was being avoided begins to feel more present, not less. Attempts to dismiss it can make it feel even more persistent. The mind tries to explain away as coincidence, curiosity, or temporary emotion, but deeper reactions are not always so easily categorized. When something holds emotional weight, it resists being minimized. The more it is pushed aside, the more it can return in subtle but noticeable ways. This doesn't necessarily mean certainty or absolute conclusions, but it does reflect internal conflict. A person may try to maintain control by distancing themselves from what they feel, but that distance doesn't always resolve the emotion. Instead, it can create a cycle of pull and resistance, where thoughts return even when someone tries not to engage with them. Over time, this can lead to inconsistency in behavior, not because of confusion alone, but because of competing internal responses. One part may lean toward emotional acknowledgement, while another part tries to maintain restraint and control. This tension can feel draining, especially when neither side fully resolves. The mind attempts to balance what is felt with what is acceptable, and that imbalance can create ongoing psychological pressure. Eventually, avoidance itself can become tiring. What once felt like protection may start to feel like internal conflict. The effort to suppress or rationalize emotions can lose effectiveness when the feelings keep resurfacing. At that stage, people often begin to reflect more deeply on what they're experiencing. They may question why certain thoughts keep returning or why specific emotions feel more persistent than expected. These reflections don't always lead to immediate action, but they do increase awareness. However, awareness doesn't automatically create resolution. Sometimes it creates more tension, because recognizing a feeling doesn't always mean a person is ready to act on it. This creates a push and pull dynamic between understanding and hesitation. In such moments, distance doesn't necessarily reduce emotional intensity. Instead, absence can sometimes make thoughts more noticeable, because fewer distractions remain. The mind fills silence with reflection, whether intentional or not. As internal conflict continues, a person may begin to notice their own patterns, how they react, how they avoid certain thoughts, and how they return them despite trying not to. This awareness can make emotional resistance harder to maintain in the same way. Still, even when something is strongly felt, it doesn't always translate into immediate action. People often move between clarity and restraint, especially when emotions feel significant or unfamiliar. That hesitation is part of internal processing, not necessarily a final decision. What remains consistent is that suppressed emotions rarely stay static. They shift, evolve, and resurface in different forms until they are understood or addressed in some way. The intensity may fluctuate, but the internal presence of unresolved feelings tends to persist. Ultimately, when someone becomes deeply aware of what they're feeling, it creates a point of reflection where they can no longer completely ignore it. But what they choose to do with that awareness depends on timing, readiness, and personal understanding, not inevitability. And in that space between awareness and action, most of the real emotional processing actually happens.